because this container is not big enough. What container is holding you back? What container are you being stuck in that you need? Today we're going to discuss now. Earlier this week, I was watering my plants, and as I was watering them, I realized that no matter what I was changing in my watering techniques, no matter what I was doing, no matter how much sunlight my babies would get, the ends were still browning. Some parts of the plant were still dying off. And I was like, what is going on? I'm giving them love, I'm speaking to them. What's happening? Well, it was shared with me to change the container. They need a bigger container, right? And so the following week, I experienced more breakage. And I was like, well, I followed some of the other advice by not watering it as much, right? I wanted to do that first, right? I didn't want to just make a sudden change completely across the board. Call it not trusting, or just that's what my label was for it. But the reality is that, yeah, I actually wanted to just change the frequency in which I was watering it. Let me see if that helps. Change one element at a time. That way you know exactly what it was. So if it happens again, you know what's wrong. So when that didn't help, I said, you know what? It must be what was said. The roots in the container were growing out of the top. They had nowhere to grow. It needed a bigger container. So what I did was I pulled those plants out of the containers that they were in, and I left them in the bigger container because they were still constrained in the smaller container within a bigger container. So they were already in a larger container. They just couldn't access the space of the larger container yet because the smaller container had not been moved. Now, do you understand where we're going with this? Right? Sometimes there are smaller containers in your way. Sometimes there are containers that they served you at one point and they no longer serve. It doesn't mean that you were using them. It doesn't mean that they are bad people. It doesn't mean anything. It just means that it doesn't mean that this container is bad. It just means that it's no longer useful for this particular plant, okay? The bigger pot is needed, but this is really a transitional pot because this pot still isn't large enough, right? So we moved it to a slightly bigger container, right? And we still nourish it. We still give it the nourishment that we need, so we make sure that that's not in concern, right? But if the container's not large enough, what's going to happen? No matter how much ends you cut off, they're still going to brown. They're still going to operate because in the way that they're going to operate, because they have limited root capacity. So what happens? We need a even larger container because this container is not big enough. What container is holding you back? What container are you being stuck in that you need to let your roots spread because your container is much larger than you've given yourself credit to? What container are you allowing to hold you back? This is not about a blame game, because the container that once held you is not wrong because the size is not large enough. They're not wrong. Okay? Now, if they want you to stay inside of it, if this container wanted these plants to stay inside of it no matter what, even though the roots are growing out of, they have nowhere to grow, even though the plant's leaves are dying off, if the container had a will, right, that will is more important than this plant's destiny. And so this container wants to keep this plant inside of this container, and that's not how that best serves the plant. So that's when it would be wrong to expect the plant to stay in that container. But let this container encourage this container to grow. That would be beautiful. That would be love. Now, if this container secretly wishes that the container stays limited, then we have a problem. Hi. If that container secretly wants it to stay limited, then that is also a problem. But again, it does not matter what that container wants. What matters is what the plant wants. What matters is what the root wants. Now, the plant, I presume, does not want to die. So some of these leaves are dying off because what? We need to allow it the space to grow into the larger container that it is naturally meant to grow to. Now, if we want this plant smaller, maybe I could cut off some things and the plant can stay small so it can stay limited in its capacity and it just stays where it is, and then the leaves just keep falling off because it doesn't fit. We can do that. But why would we want to do that? Why would we want to, is the question. So I say, get a bigger container. Get rid of the smaller containers. Peace.